Hello, in this video I'm going to go over the next 5 of Brown's 14 morphemes, and I have grouped these 5 together because they are all verbs or verb inflections. So we will start with progressive ing, and I also should mention that I didn't list the Brown's 14 morphemes in order of acquisition. They were grouped together by type. So progressive ing is actually the first of Brown's 14 morphemes that children, typically developing children, will acquire. And progressive ing is also referred to as a present participle or present progressive ing. And I don't really like that name for it because I think it's confusing. The word present indicates that it has something to do with tense, which it actually doesn't. The ing in progressive ing indicates the aspect of a verb, but not the tense. So the tense would be whether the verb occurred in the past or present or future, whereas the aspect would indicate whether the action was ongoing or has been completed. And we will talk more about tense and aspect in the next module. But just know that progressive ing can be either past or present, as we can see in the examples. He is walking, which is a present tense sentence, and he was walking, which is a past tense sentence. And we're not worried about tense in these, we're just worried about the aspect, or whether or not the action of the main verb, which is walk, was ongoing or completed. And when we use the progressive ing, it denotes that the action was ongoing or continuous. He was walking. If it had been completed, then we would use the completed participle and say he had walked. And then it's done. One thing to watch out for with progressive ing is not to confuse it with gerunds or adjectives, which can also use the ing form. So a gerund is when a verb is used as a noun. So we can take the sentence, swimming is fun, or I like swimming, and the ing on swimming there is not progressive ing because this would be a gerund. So in the sentence, swimming is fun, swimming is being used as a noun. It's the subject of the sentence. And in the sentence, I like swimming, swimming is also being used as a noun. It's the object in the sentence. And we can tell it's a noun by the position in the sentence. Also, we could replace swimming with another noun. We could say, I like cheese, and that would also work. So we can tell in this sentence that is a noun, so that ing would not be the progressive ing morpheme. Also, the ing morpheme can be used in adjectives. So the rocking chair, the singing group, or the swimming pool, these are all adjectival forms. The rocking chair, rocking, is not being used as a verb. We're not saying that the chair is rocking. We're saying it's a rocking chair, right? So rocking in this case is an adjective describing what type of chair it is. One other thing to note is the form gonna. So in saying something like I'm gonna swim does not count as an obligatory context for the progressive ing morpheme. Even though gonna is a form of going to. So if you said I'm gonna swim, that would be the same as saying I'm going to swim. And the reason why this doesn't count is because children learn these contracted forms like gonna as a single form, and they might not know that gonna is a contracted form of going to. So we wouldn't want to give them credit for going to, which would be 3 morphemes, go, and then the ing, and then to, when they might not have that in their system yet. So gonna just counts as 1 morpheme in child language samples. So an example of an omitted ing, progressive ing, would be if a child said something like, I'm play with my toys, right? So this would be an obligatory context for the progressive ing, and they omitted it. So what they should have said was, I'm playing with my toys. So our next morpheme is the regular past tense ed morpheme, And this is used in English to indicate past tense on regular verbs, right? So we have walk, to walk, the verb, and if it happened in the past, it would be walked with an ed added at the end. And one thing to remember with the past tense ed morpheme is not to confuse it with the past participle ed morpheme, which is also marked with an ed form. But again, on this, the past participle is indicating aspect, even though it has the name, the unfortunate name, past in the title. It is marking completed aspect. So you can tell a difference with these because in the sentence, I'm so scared, that ed is a participle. And you can tell this because the first verb, am, in I am so scared, is marking the tense, and this would be present tense. If it were past tense, the sentence would be I was so scared. So one thing to remember is that the tense is always marked on the first verb and aspect on the second verb. So in the sentence, I am so scared, the first verb is am, and that's marked for present tense. And the second verb is a participle, scared, which is marked for completed aspect. In the sentence, she scared me, there's only one verb, so it's by default the first verb and must be marked for tense. So in she scared me, that would be the regular past tense ed morpheme. And again, we'll go over tense and aspect a little bit more in the next module. Another form to not confuse the regular past tense ed with is the adjectival ed. So this would be like a smashed grape, the locked door, the spotted cow. Again, these are all adjectives describing nouns. So you can tell by the position of the word in the sentence what function the word is using. So a past tense ed is always going to be marked on the main verb. And an example of a child omitting the regular past tense ed form would be if they said something like, yesterday I walked to the store. Right, and so that was an obligatory context for the ed morpheme, and they should have said, I walked to the store. And our next morpheme is the irregular past tense. So this is how verbs, irregular verbs, are inflected for past tense. So for a regular verb like walk, we add ed to mark the past tense, walked. And on an irregular verb, it has a few different types of forms that it takes. So these would be verbs like went, broke, hit, or lost. So it's irregular because the regular rule would be to add ed. So if we had the verb to lose, if it were regular, it would be losed, right? But this is an irregular verb, so instead of losed, it says lost. And this category includes the verbs do and have, so the irregular forms did and had. But it does not include the irregular past tense of the verb to be, so were and was, because these are counted as uncontractable copulas and auxiliaries, which we will go over in the next video. So irregular past tense forms are considered one morpheme for child samples, and this is because kids learn these verbs as a frozen form, right? So the irregular past tense verb went, a child will pick that up, I went home, but they don't necessarily have in their grammatical system yet that this is the past tense of the verb go. They have just learned it as the frozen form went. So we only give them credit for one morpheme, whereas in an adult sample they would get two morphemes. They would get the verb go plus irregular past tense. An example of a child omitting an irregular past tense verb would be if they said something like, yesterday I go to school, right? So they didn't mark the verb for tense at all. They should have said, yesterday I went to school. And another common error you will see in young children's speech is over-regularizing regular verbs. So that means that they are using the past tense ed form on a verb even though it's an irregular verb. So they would say something like, yesterday I goed to school, instead of yesterday I went to school. And errors like this tell us that they do in fact learn irregular verbs initially as frozen forms, right? So if they knew that went was go plus past, they wouldn't make errors like goed. And so this is one way we can tell where they're at with their development. Next we have the regular third person singular present tense S. So this would be the S in walks in the sentence she walks to the store, which is indicating that the verb walk has taken place in the present tense. And you'll notice that English uses S for a lot of its inflectional morphemes, like plural S, possessive S, and now present tense S. And in standard English, only verbs with third person singular subjects are marked for present tense. So you can say I walk, you walk, we walk, they walk, but you can't say she walk. That would be ungrammatical. Third person singular subjects require that S inflection. So it would be she walks. And an example of a child omitting the regular third person singular present tense S would be if it said something like she walked to the store. That would be an obligatory context for regular third person singular present tense. And then we have the irregular third person singular present tense. And these are the verbs have and do, which are inflected for third person present tense to be has and does. And notice that these are irregular because in the regular verbs we just add an S. So walk becomes walks. But the verb have, to have, doesn't become haves, which would be the regular form. It becomes has. So it's an irregular form. And same with the verb do. It doesn't go to does, it goes to does. So that's why these are considered irregular. Some people will include the verb to say in this because it goes say, says, instead of say, says. But for this class, we're only going to include has and does. One thing that some people get confused with is the verb go, goes. They might think that is an irregular form because it's spelled the same as does, but we're not concerned with spelling here. We're just concerned with the phonetic form. So go, goes is regular because it's just adding an S, whereas do, does, you have that vowel change. So that's an irregular form. And the third person irregular is included on the main and auxiliary versions of to have and to do. So this would include she has to go home. That would be a main verb, have. Or she has got a smile on her face. That would be an auxiliary form of the verb have. And notice this can be contracted. So instead of she has got a smile on her face, you could say she's got a smile on her face. But you want to be careful not to confuse this with the contracted to be verb. So it's not she is got a smile on her face, it's she has got a smile on her face. And this would also include the negative forms of have and do, so that would be hasn't and doesn't. And so the third person irregular is just considered one morpheme, again for child samples, because they learn these as frozen forms, and for an adult it would be two morphemes. An example of a child omitting the irregular third person singular present tense would be if they said something like she not like it, right, where they omitted the does when it should be she does not like it or she doesn't like it. Okay, and then in our next video we are going to go over the final four of Brown's morphemes, which are all the forms of the verb to be.